heard one time Tyler Perry saying the world began giving him compassion when they began realizing how he had to jump over dead bodies on his way to school. And then I go like, I think I need some of that compassion, because that was just a typical day. And of course, God forbid, when it's raining, and then the township, everything just comes out. It's almost like the township throws up. The land throws up when it's raining. It's mad, but you still have to go to school. You still have to say, good morning, sir, whether your clothes are wet or not. So I'm saying that business will sculpt you, will chisel away whatever you assumed. So I'm saying to the viewers, keep up the chiseling. Let business chisel away fake friends, because a business journey will actually sift out fake friends much quicker than any perceptive. Are they for me? Are they not? No, just start something and then see the shaking start. So I was coming from that, meaning I'm daring our viewers to say,
welcome to another edition of Mindset Profits. This is personally an episode that I've waited a very long time for, because a brother and a friend is here today. I always say there's really three people that helped me launch, and the good thing is he doesn't know that he's one of them. If you check episode 1, there is Noctula who really believed in me, believed I could pull this off. She had a design of how I was going to do the podcast, where I was going to shoot. She had ideas for even guests that I would interview, but I kept procrastinating. The day I decided to start, I went to her office and said, you know what, Knox, today I'm ready. The cameras are here. And she said, but I'm not ready. Ngati, you are the first guest. If we don't do it today, I'm not starting. We're going to procrastinate for another year. And poor her, shame, she just said, all right, for the sake of this thing starting, let's just do it. So she's episode 1. The second is Witness Mtaga. I got to work with Witness Mtaga, a content creator, popular. You've seen him on the podcast as well. And I think looking at him and how easy it was to pick up a camera, shoot, say something, post it immediately, I thought, you know, you get exposed to a world that just works different to how you think. And then I talked to him about his podcast, because I was saying, why don't you do this? And then in the discussion, he said, I'm actually going to start it. 2 weeks later, he's recording the first episode. Yeah. And I had been procrastinating for over a year. And Ngati, what is this? So I got to meet Shadrack, our guest today. And we met by a hotel. Do you remember? I've forgotten the hotel though.
Yes.
But we met, and he said something powerful and offensive at the same time.
Apologizing in advance. It might have been a Radisson, yes.
You remember what you said? You said, we talked about all that I was doing and everything that I have. And you said, you know what the problem with you, coach, is your resources are here. Your income is here. Yes, you remember that?
I recall that.
Man, that hit hard. That hit a nerve. Because I got back and I was doing some self-checking, and I realized I've got the cameras. I've had them for 2 years. Yeah. I've got all the mics. These mics were there by then.
Gathering dust.
2 years, gathering dust. They had not recorded anything. So I was one of those that got excited about starting, went and bought the tech. Yeah. But never recorded anything. When you say that, it hit somewhere. Yes. I think the next week I went to Knox when I came back from that trip that I was going, and said, Knox, let's do this thing.
Wow. I recall the hotel. It's actually Balalaika, opposite the JSC.
Yeah, boy.
We sat down there.
So I guess thank you.
Thank you.
This is part of your work, man.
Yeah. I'm both surprised. but honored at the same time. I think it was Advocate Tulima Donsela's book, Speaking Truth to Power, which I haven't picked it up yet, but it's a common notion, speaking truth to power. It's like, would you have the guts to speak truth to power when you could be when you could be beheaded in the process. But I think we're being real, right? But they're not so visited dimension of that.
Yeah.
I was speaking truth to friends.
That is true.
It's not in the corridors of power. It's between two brothers. Can I be real with him? Offline or
really
online? That's needed, right? That's needed. But I suppose also there are some aerobics around how to speak truth to a brother.
Because you can get it horribly wrong.
Are you coming from the right place? Even if you get it wrong, but are you coming from the right place? Is your heart in the right place?
Man, for those that don't know you,
yes,
I'll just say this though. The reason why I think it hit hard is the level of respect I already had for you. Watching you work across Africa, launch your platform, and the level of respect I got interviewing you on radio.
Wow, yes.
This brother is super smart.
He's very kind. It's good to have kind brothers. Thank you.
So we gotta make this a nice business masterclass because the way you've grown in business, and where you started from, two different sides of the continent.
That's true.
So let's talk to your background.
Yes.
So that someone has context when I say this is where you're coming from.
Thank you.
So that by the time we get to where you are, it makes sense.
Of course.
Yeah.
The backdrop of my beginning and upbringing is that I'm a son of a farmer. Mm-hmm. I was raised by not one, but two highly industrious women. Mm-hmm. My late gran, who was a coffee farmer, and my mom, who's still with us, who decided to take the road more frequently traveled. She was not as adventurous as my granny, who was actually a unionist, tent coffee farmer in the heart of South Africa, not by East Africa's coffee belt. Mm-hmm. So my mom took the road frequently travel. She decided to farm crops, but she had interesting friends. She had good neighbors who exposed me to the livestock side of it. So that's my phase one. Arriving, living off the ground. I'm the last generation from my village community in the vicinity of an interesting place. We'll touch on that. I'm the last generation. When I left home, the generation after me did not live off the ground to the level that we did, out of necessity. So things like tuck shops, spaza shops, they were not popular. You were the spaza. You had to chase that chicken because it was on a free range.
So this was in a village?
Yeah, this was in a village. And of course, I left at 15. I headed to the big city, took a risk. I say a risk because I knew nothing about Johannesburg.
Did you have someone supporting you?
I had to make a pitch. I had to make a life-changing pitch to my mom, who was both my mom and my boss, because by the time I reached the age of 9, 10, she has already involved me in more than 5 businesses.
Okay.
To say she was a serialpreneur will be putting it very mildly. She was juggling, and for some reason she looked to me as an unofficial consultant in her businesses.
At 10.
I'm telling you, I started a salon. You do some things. I had to learn how to cut hair, not on dollies, but I had to learn on people.
On people.
Yeah, so they were very gracious with me. So. But it later turned out not to be about the hair, but it later turned out to be about my journey. Even the farming side of the business, struggling, rolling with the punches, going to the markets with the produce, and having to face off at 10 on a donkey wagon in the hot sun of the northern province, having to face off with the donkeys are tired and the market master is looking at you, thinking that I'm just going to check the clock and every minute is minusing value from your yields. So you're gonna have to. How about that first price I suggested? Because your donkeys need water. I can pull a pipe but We have to settle on that price. So I already got introduced from that young age, settling donkeys, to the market forces that exist in trade. I didn't have to learn about monopolies at university. They were in my backyard. And while I'm trying to live off the ground, there were two farmers. That, to say they were commercial scale will be an understatement. Their farms spanned at least 8 kilometers. A farm.
One farm.
I don't want to talk about hectares and everything. Relatability. 8 kilometers, one farm, to that direction and that direction. They were, when it was harvest, they had to call fleets of trucks that will cause traffic in the village. The trucks may take 2 hours to clear as they are living, and they will end up in Africa. The Trans-Africa trade started at the foot in my neighborhood. I'm just a son of a farmer. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to eat tonight. But here is a trade. Here is the 24-wheelers going, bah, 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 bah. You can hear the gears changing, and it does something. And when I look up, there's the fighter jets passing, because I grew up on the path of 2 military bases. So your Spitfires. So between the Spitfire and the Hawk trying to come for my chickens, those were humbling days. So I ended up.
Did these guys ever get to teach you anything, like on a personal level, or you just saw them from a distance?
Good question. My neighborhood was not without its tensions. The haves and the have-nots, they didn't teach me anything, because when they saw me, they saw a potential farmhand, a farm laborer. So you don't teach a farm laborer anything. According to popular opinion back then, what you do, you deploy them as a farmhand. So they were waiting for me. It's only a matter of time before he gets here, so he can join the boys. And we had people banking school, not to smoke dacha or anything, but to actually make a living. People were banking school. And when we see why they were banking school, was to make a living on the farm. So farms, commercial interests were competing with education interests. So that was my background. So I pitched my mom and said, you have to please let me venture out to the big cities. I don't know what your 5 businesses are going to look like without your right hand. I humbly submit at 15. If you just let me give it a shot. And she said yes. So long before any Silicon Valley or any funding, any capital raise, my first pitch that changed everything was pitching my mom and say, you gotta unleash me and let me take a leap. And yeah.
What was the experience at Joburg? Where were you staying?
The Hillbrow I saw on TV. And the Hillbrow, you know that tower.
Yeah, I know.
That telecom tower.
Yeah.
Yeah, long before Santen became quite popular on the telenovelas.
Yeah,
and the soapies. No, it was that tower. So I saw it on TV and it was a dream, but on the ground when I arrived, I nearly lost my life a number of times. I've had people approach me. I remember this one time. This was a what do you call it? This was a breaking point. There is this hotel called Mimosa, which was taken over by certain forces. I lived in its vicinity. Between Mimosa and the fire station, I had my own baptism of fire there. So
crime.
So they approached me. These two, I don't call them gentlemen. These 2 individuals. They approached me, and one of them lifts their T-shirts and goes like, "Listen, I think you may want to look under my T-shirt." I look and I can see there what appeared to be a loaded weapon. I say appeared to be because I didn't check the load. Then he said, "Here's what happens next. What's going to happen here now is you are going to..." He was interrupted. He was interrupted by a firearm going off, not his. A number of them. There was a shootout, and that's how my life was saved. They split that way. In
what do you think he wanted?
I left. No, he was basically about to pet me. He was whatever, and I don't know why he would drop someone like me, because I had nothing. But nonetheless, he was about to discover. So that's how I left Hillbrow, and I ended up in Alexander Township, where I spent about 3 years. I did my last years of schooling in Alexander Township. So cutting across the village and the township. And later on, it paid off pitching my mom. She didn't give me capital, but pitching her brought me close to capital.
Okay.
And I was able to be very privileged. I was awarded up to 6 scholarships for
when you say pitching her brought you close to capital because you're in Alexander, are you talking about the scholarship that you then won because you were there?
From across the road in Santen, opportunities were thrown across the road in a form of scholarships for me to study further. I had 6 of those. Had I not pitched her, had she not given me her blessing to say, go to Johannesburg and try out something, had she held me back, I wouldn't have been in those rooms where the applications were discussed. And yes, so that's how I had my final schooling years in matric in Alexander Township.
How would you describe yourself during that period? Were you an those A-lister students, top achievers?
I was a hard worker, but the fright of having to navigate the township, I think from a mental health perspective, without saying my therapist this, because I did not have a therapist. From a mental health perspective, I think it took a toll on me. Talk about having to navigate your home and the school, which is 2 kilometers away, but a lot can happen in 2 kilometers. If the aunt or a random woman who's now emptying her Vascomo nearly onto you with the chambers, with whatever, maybe your listeners may be familiar with the chamber there. Those that are not, it's fine. So they can look it up maybe on ChatGPT. So if you miss if you miss the chamber, then you might be accosted. So I had to survive those things. I had one time Tyler Perry saying the world began giving him compassion when they began realizing how he had to jump over dead bodies on his way to school. And then I go like, I think I need some of that compassion. I think I need some of that compassion because that was just a typical day. And of course, God forbid when it's raining. And then the township, everything just comes out. It's almost like the township throws up. The land throws up when it's raining. It's mad, but you still have to go to school. You still have to say good morning, sir, whether your clothes are wet or not. And of course, now and then there's an occasional trip between Alexandra across into Santen, which by itself was quite a bit of kilometers to get access to the Santen library.
You would walk?
I would walk. I remember there was a time I walked with one of my classmates. It rained. It stopped raining, then it rained again while we were on our way. And we still had to make it to Mandela Square. Back then, Santon Square. Yeah.
All right, this is... How far have you come now? Just summarize your business and what you do. Because I want us to focus on just lessons that you've learned along the way. What does the platform stand for? What have you been doing in consulting and just around Africa?
So the hat I currently wear, and that I'll be wearing for a long time, I'm the co-founder and CEO of the eFarmer app, which is an Agritech startup connecting farmers to buyers. That bridge where trade has to be enabled, crops and meat has to exchange hands. I found myself with my co-founder and wife, Preeti, having to configure and construct that platform from the bottom up without much exposure to the world of tech until we had to land into that. And what segued us into that tech world where we are reconnecting with our farming upbringing roots, because she too was raised by farmers.
Okay.
But of course, we also shared something else in common. We both wanted nothing to do with farming, because farming as we knew it, dead under your nails, slog the whole day, break your back. I had to wake up at 3 a.m. back in the village. So I think there's a level of trauma that comes with that. There's a level of trauma that comes with having to wake up at 3 a.m. and you won't eat a thing until the sun is too hot. The sun is used as a barometer. So only when the sun is too hot, then we say, time out. Now we're going to sit down and have our first meal. That's 6 hours later. And on school days, you farm 4 hours, 5 hours, then you make it to school. By the time you say, good morning, ma'am, or good morning, teacher, you've already put in 5 hours on the farm. So we both, for understandable reason, wanted to just steer clear of farming. Just wanted to steer clear of agriculture.
And then you build the platform.
Yes.
In terms of consulting, what were you consulting on?
I hail from a background of management consulting, where my co-founder and I both do. So you see, we share more in common. But her angle came more from consulting at the intersection of communities that needed funding or capital, or that needed the corporates that set up in their neighborhood, mainly mines and manufacturing. They needed to honor their social contract as to giving back. There had to be a brokerage in between. That was a specialty.
Okay.
On my side, the extreme sports of kicking off projects, bringing them to market, and then scaling them towards hyper adoption. That is where I set up my office. And my last corporate role was with Deloitte. And one of the health insurance schemes, medical schemes, that is actually among the top 3 in this country. I was privileged to be on the Deloitte team that heralded it into market. An extreme sports of sort that saw us touching 5 billion rand on the books in 36 months. Let's just say my health nearly caved in. But nonetheless, the star was pinned onto my wall. That's my background. Of course, I then left corporate. I went on a journey that lasted for 10 years, consulting privately, running the same consulting firm with my now wife of 11 years. And she got adopted into it. You know, it came with a holy matrimony. She had to get involved in the family business. So we consulted across Africa, whether we were consulting governments on rethinking and redesigning their mining development framework, or we were consulting with a family that is seeking to either kickstart their brand or reposition it for monetization. That's where our hotel conversation came, that why is there a disparity between what's possible and what's actually happening. That's where we set up
Don't go there
shop.
again. You don't want to trigger me during the podcast.
No, that is where I was coming from. That's a backdrop. So that's many lessons learned in helping whether families or working with corporates to bring projects or product into market. You know, I encourage each and everyone, talking about your starting a podcast journey, I encourage each and every one of our viewers here and to not necessarily start a podcast, because we can't all have podcasts. Some of us have to be hosted, right?
Yeah.
But to start something. Even if they have a full-time role at work, to start something. No, not necessarily a side hustle. Let's not go there. But to start something, because starting something will humble you. There's a whole lot of assumptions that you will venture into the clouds with head in the clouds. It will humble you. I don't have any other way, because you can run the numbers, you can have the Excel spreadsheet, you can map out the vision board, you can have the team, you can have the best of breed, but just like the farmer who can't predict the rain or the hail or the frost.
Business will humble you.
It will humble you in a way that no classroom experience will. So to start something, it doesn't matter what it is. So that's what I put it to you.
No, but you're throwing it and in not so encouraging words.
Oh, encouraging.
Because look, you're basically saying start something, and I guarantee you it's going to come with a whole lot of challenges.
Oh, I see. Okay, let me put it this way. My apologies to the viewers for starting at that angle, but let me come back. I digress. There is the Michelangelo.
Yeah.
Not the hotel, the artist. In his sculpting career, one of the podcast moments he had, pre-podcast, he attempted to impart why he has devoted himself so solely to the art and science of sculpting, and sculpting it very well. I know he painted a ceiling somewhere that most may be familiar with, but it is his sculpting that causes me to talk like that. He said, you know, when I'm sculpting, I'm not necessarily trying to create something, even though a creation will emerge, a product will emerge, but that's not why I'm venturing out on a sculpting journey. I perceived, or I caught a glimpse of an angel trapped in a rock, and I had to hurry up and grab my toolbox to go and free and liberate it. So I'm saying that business will sculpt you will chisel away whatever you assumed. So I'm saying to the viewers, keep up the chiseling. Let business chisel away fake friends, because a business journey will actually sift out fake friends much quicker than any perceptive. Are they for me? Are they not? No, just start something and then see the shaking start. So I was coming from that, meaning I'm daring our viewers to say, I dare you, I encourage you to start, because you will meet yourself on the journey. It will be trying to make something work that looks like it's dying on your watch. It will get you rediscovering you. You meet you. You go, oh, so this is me. Yes, and in the process, this thing called growth happens.
I didn't even think you would go there, and I'm so happy you did. Where I thought you would go, and I'll give you this example. I've given this story before.
Yes.
As someone that I met, and it hurt me because they were about to lose their business.
Whoa.
And when we were talking, they had invested millions from their pension. And this is someone who's retired.
That's how not to, but continue.
So the question I asked was, I see that you did take your pension.
Yes.
You started a business. Had you done business at any point in your life, side hustle, anything? And the answer was no. So the first time they were encountering entrepreneurship was with retirement money, when they had everything to lose.
I'm cringing. Yeah.
That's where I thought you were going.
I see.
But what do you have to say to someone like that? Because it still speaks to what you were talking about. That starts something.
Yes. So when it comes to starting, to those in their 60s, I say, I wish you started at 6. If you missed that, maybe at 16. If you missed that, maybe at 26. But now that you're 60, it might be time to borrow influence. What does that mean? We think of influence as, I'm an influencer. That is true, but that's not where influence begins and ends. Borrowing influence could mean, if I'm in my 60s or 70s, and I still want to start something, we're not going to stop you. We actually encourage you to. But how you go about starting, how you approach the landscape, you might have to learn the art of working through others and with others. You're not 26. You don't have as much energy in your tank. You won't be. You may not be able to attend 5 to 8 Zoom meetings a day. That might just take you out. So I say, if you're in your 60s or 70s, it's time to have a family meeting. And then, they usually say in Silicon Valley or elsewhere that friends and family are supposed to fund you first. In Africa, that may not be so, but friends and family may need to support you with their energies, with their skill set, and with their expertise. Because when we see your family believe in you, we may want to do business with you. But if you're flying solo at 60, at 70, we may avoid you. And not because we are saying you are doomed, but we are saying we were wishing to see a layer of trust around you before we lean forward. We're not judging you, but we're saying with the gray hairs on your head, it means you have a resource. You have at least 2 generations around you. Why are you not getting their buy-in? Now I'm asking that question. I'm asking for a friend. Why are you not getting their buy-in? No. Family is family. Business is business. Not quite. So that's one. I'm saying start. But let your approach not be similar, a cut and paste, the way you would have started if you're 26. At 26,
you can fly solo.
At 26, you need to have 10 Zoom meetings a day. You need to tomorrow have 5 in-person meetings. You need to go full throttle. You need to burn that energy the way a jet burns jet fuel. You need to burn it. You need to go do your laps and figure out everything because you have the energy.
Yeah.
But let's say now you're trapped in corporates and you're in your 30s or 40s. If you're about to start a business, I say, you still need to have a family meeting. Are you married? Ask the missus how she feels. Because sometimes in Shadrack's bravery to venture out there, he might step on toes. It's easy to hear about stepping on toes in corporates, but you may step on toes at home. And I'm not saying now we need to say, oh no, my wife is going to hold me back, or my wife is going to say, go babes, go. It doesn't matter on which side of the pendulum, but just make sure you get the family's buy-in, because remember, the ring on your finger means they have to co-risk with you. Are you going to pace that business journey? Are you going to devote some, not a pension, some family resources to that? I say some because if you to look at the US and Africa, while the US is a country, Africa is a continent, the mindset there is that when you are starting a business, getting buy-in from those around you and those that are in the angel investment or VC, it's a bigger priority than you burning your jet fuel and reaching for the pension. That's the reason why it's called pension. It's got its own purpose. Pensions have no business on being in business. The day you reach for your pension, I'm cringing. I'm leaving the WhatsApp group because that's not what pensions are meant to do. Pensions are for a rainy day. Pensions are for the marathon. So in Africa, not just SA, in Africa we have a tendency of thinking that if it's my business, my money, and yet I understand there's the other extreme, recklessness. Maybe some of the viewers definitely, when they've been listening to your discussions on money, they might have listened to other discussions where certain creepy uncles, I call them creepy uncles, are quick to say, always use other people's money. Slow down. Let's not be reckless, because the idea there is that because it's other people's money, there's no risk attached to it. There is risk. They're coming alongside you to co-risk with you. So let's revere and honor the sacredness of being trusted with other people's money. So those are...
You remind me of someone who says business grows at the speed of trust.
Thank you. Yeah, the high velocity of trust is what informs business growth. Yes. So
All
yes,
right.
I was not discouraging our viewers. I say, let's go for it. However, let's do our homework.
What have you learned? Or maybe before I ask my question, have you had a business venture that failed before? Because you sound like you've made everything work so far.
I wish. My first business, registered business, tankered in 2 years. And, I put my heart and soul into it. It was actually an advertising business.
Okay.
I put my heart and soul into... I've always been passionate about advertising, from observing the searches, from observing your TBWA, Hunt Lascaras, your Joe Publics. Man, I go like, that's it. Let me kick off my journey. Let's just say I flew into those clouds with a lot more assumptions than I needed to carry on board. So how did it fail? I slogged, I toiled for 2 years. I've got a certain level of stubbornness in me that makes me a loyal friend.
Okay.
Who won't give up on the relationship. That makes me loyal in church. That makes me loyal in marriage. But you flip that around. Stubbornness. I think it was the movie, The American Gangster, where someone was counseling the lead actor. They said, to quit while you are ahead.
Yeah.
It's not quitting. but I didn't get that memo. So I held on to that business with dear life. The business was taking the very life from me. It finished taking money. There was no more money to take. It was sapping life out of me. I was depressed. I dreaded waking up, but I stayed because I'm my goodness, I am stubborn. So
were you married?
Was I married? Yes. I sank my nails in. However, when I had to let it go, I was so hurt that I wrote a poem to let go of that business. I've never written a poem on failure before. I've never written it after. And the name of the business was MS Ads, by the way. MS Advertising. So I wrote a parting, almost like what do you call this? An obituary.
Do you remember parts of it?
I do. I said something along the lines of, right here, right now, we have to part. Let us part for destiny's sake. I cherish the first day you came into my life. It was quickly displaced by the by the heart-racing moments. The highs were very high, but the lows, they were a cringe-worthy. But look, without much further ado, let us part for destiny's sake. When my story is told, when I finally succeed without you in the picture, I'll remember to mention your name because you are forever engraved.
When you're reciting the whole thing,
you are forever engraved. It was written in tears. So things that you pen in tears or you produce in tears, they are burned into your soul forever.
Actually, there is a theory. It's called peak and theory. It talks about the way you remember things in your past.
Yes.
When you remember an event, you remember the peak moments where emotionally you were at your peak, either happiest or angriest or saddest, and how it ended.
Yeah.
So that's why it's easy for you to recall.
Tap into it. So we parted, and I'm glad I did because, by the way, in school, some of my short stories in my matric year, one of those short stories, I was sharing it with my English teacher when I caught up with him. It's a story that changed me. That's why I had to let go of that business when I eventually came to my senses. There's a story whose villain was Mr. Slade. I remember what it was. He knows what the story was. His villain was Mr. Slade. And Mr. Slade was a crooked businessman. And he ended up, sadly, taking out one of his business allies. And then he went to the beach to actually go and throw them into the ocean at night. And while he was throwing them, he knew very little about biology. So this thing called rigor mortis, which is the stiffening of the muscles after death. It could be an hour, it could be many hours, I'm not sure. But at that moment, as he tries to toss the deceased, the body into the water, the rigor mortis started, the muscles started kind of like clinging onto him. At that very moment, it was the turning of the tide. So the moon was actually pulling the ocean towards Mr. Slade, and then the oceans buried him. He was killed by the very person he killed. So I started seeing how the business that would not die, but neither would it leave, it was clinging onto me, trying to take me under the waves. So I had to part ways for destiny's sake. And I'm glad
You wrote that story.
I wrote a poem that reflected on our story and my current calamity.
Man, you were creative very early in your journey. When you look at that business,
Yes.
the business that failed,
Yes.
when you look at how you've started with your background as well, what have you learned about starting a business with no capital?
So whether you have the capital or you don't have the capital,
Let's say,
I'm saying listen more than you speak.
Okay.
Especially when you don't have the capital. Let me quantify this. So you meet a prospect client. Back then, I was trying to make signages. I was trying to make everything, design, graphic design. I'm self-taught back then. I don't touch that anymore. However, when I meet a client, the questions I should have asked was, so I noticed that your plumbing business, the signage there is faded. Do you think your clients in any way are bothered by that? That's a question I didn't ask. So tell me, what did it cost for you to put that signage up there? And how far back did you install it? Do you think now we could look at a paint job or a new sign altogether? Actually, would you consider rebranding? No, I didn't. I came into the business. I told the panel beating company owner that, bro, it's time to rebrand. Never mind, bro was in his 70s and I was in my 20s. I brought a certain level of cockiness that I think business failure needed to grind out of my system. I was with all the answers. I knew the color schemes. I knew what goes well with what font. And I knew how to design a logo. So I thought that licensed me to tell Mr. Panel beating company owner what to do. So I walked around. I wouldn't admit it back then, but I walked around knowing too much. So that was not the last business fail I had. I had a series more that really came back to just keep on grinding. You know how they say the daily grind? Maybe sometimes you may be the one who's on the grind. So yeah. So I didn't ask. Had I had an opportunity to do it again? 80 to 90% of the time, I'll ask more questions. And I'm not saying that as a philosophical thing. No, I will genuinely want to know, why are we not changing the sign? Is it because we can't afford it? Or is it because we don't see a link between a freshly installed sign and business coming in? Just educate me. I'm not saying this because I want to pitch you, I want to close you. I genuinely want to know that. Why does this sign look like it has seen better days? And how's business? And how are you? No, I didn't care. I'm thinking, bro, I have to make a quick buck here. So I need the money. If I don't close you today, month end is coming. So those are the lessons learned.
It is an important lesson. When you think about someone who's afraid to start a business because they're saying, I don't have the capital.
Yeah.
Besides this powerful art of just selling by persuasion and understanding customers' needs and listening more and being empathetic and just connecting with your customers. How do you advise someone to start if they are afraid to start because they feel they don't have the money?
I love that. You know, capital is the least of your worries. And I know the viewers may be thinking, it's easy for him to say that. He's wearing this branded merch.
He's wearing capital.
Exactly. You see what I mean? He's doing well. However, let me qualify the statement. My wife, one time, she was called to give a lecture at a university. And she told those in the room to say something I'll never forget. She told them that, listen, if you're looking for a job or half of the room is trying to go into business, let me tell you about the kind of things that need to happen in the room right now, long before capital enters the room. Okay. How's your brand? Do you have a brand? No, listen, I don't know. Do you have a brand? Is your brand professionally crafted, whether by a cousin or by yourself or by somebody? Like, do you take yourself seriously? How do you dress right now? I mean, there's no capital there, right? We all wake up and we dress. But how do you dress? Do you dress as though you ought to be taken seriously? I'm not talking about a suit. Are you neat? Are you matching what you speak about? And that may not be a branded match. I need to be that practical. You may not be able to afford to brand your match. I've been there. But how are you moving furniture around in the room so that the investors are the last people to come in? The investors or customers, they are the last people to settle. If you are in a boardroom with 10 seats and you're occupying one, the next 8 seats have to be occupied by anything and everything else except capital. Tell me, how well do you know your industry? Now, I'm not talking about let's all be academic, let's research. No. When you speak about the problem you're about to solve and make money out of it, are you convincing? No, let's be real now. Am I sensing passion? Am I sensing, look, when I say passion, I don't mean charisma, like, oh, let's be cool. No. Are you so passionate about your subject that after I hear you, I go like, you know what? Whether you have a registered business or not, I want to go into business with you. But then the flip side is, why don't you have a registered business? Do you take yourself seriously? So how much is it to register a business by the registry? So let's not delude ourselves and maybe take the easy way out. I'm going to tell you, I had a friend one day who I call him the chaser of billions. I'll tell you about him in a moment. So let's not excuse ourselves from doing what we were told in school, which is to do our homework. Let's do our homework. And then what we couldn't do, something that is external, it was beyond us. Let's tick all the boxes that are in-house. Tell me, after branding, which events are you attending these days? Are you attending the kind of events that are moving you closer and closer to capital? Or you're just attending events that are kind of like introducing you to the latest brand of this, latest brand of this? So your eventing must change. Your ecosystem must change. I know most viewers are familiar with Munyadua or Umakoti. That has to be told, when you go to that house, here's how you represent us. We need you to sit on the floor. Listen, you carry the family name with you. So this is serious business. The women in the village and the women in the house they'll say, listen, when you get over there, this is what you do. This is a mindset that you need. This is what you're going to do. I wish more of those talks existed. Not just, oh no, but Shadrack, I don't have people talking into my life. What is your self-talk like? When you sit yourself down, do you go like, I can't mess up now? I cannot be increasing my follower base. Yeah, but you know this whole social media thing has got its own people. No, man. You have to put in stuff into your brand where investors will go like, let's invest in you because you already invested in yourself. So waiting for external financial capital when your own talent capital and time capital and energy capital are not on the table. What do they say in Shark Tank? I'm out. I'm out. I'm sorry.
Man, the way you dominate the mic when you say this, it makes me feel like I'm talking to a preacher. Fundis is straight.
Look at this. I'm trying to be honest. I'm trying to bring a bit of honesty here.
No, speak truth to friends. We
Yes.
allow it.
Love that.
Welcome
Love
it.
that. Thank you, sir.
So what I'm going to ask you is, because of your faith,
Yes.
what are some of the biblical principles that you would say, I follow this, it just changed my life, pay attention to this? Something you've learned from the Bible.
Good one. There's a couple of them. But yesterday, those that are theologically inclined will forgive me for not remembering the exact verse reference. They'll forgive me. So yesterday, I think it could be Proverbs 18:19. It said something along the lines, it may be very familiar to most of your audiences and yourself as well. A wise man scales over the city of the mighty, which are fortified. He scales those walls, steps in, and then takes charge of the strongholds of that city and takes over the city itself. Now that's interesting because Proverbs, the book of Proverbs, there's a tendency of going the route of being philosophical in imparting truth. But if you sit down and unpack the parable or the proverb, and you trust God to help you unpack it, you trust the author to help you unpack it, even if you unpack it blindfolded. It hit me hard yesterday. I've been a Christian for 23 years, but I've probably had that verse coming at me at least 10 times in those 23 years. But yesterday was the first time it actually hit me way harder. Why? Business-wise. So if a wise man identifies a fortified city and then leans forward, is prepared and actually carries out the scaling of his walls, steps in there, finds not the weak, the mighty,
the stronghold,
the strong that are guarding the strongholds, but he still takes it over. Let me put it differently, in a non philosophical way. He still transacts. There's barriers to entry. He transacts. He maybe is not the right skin color. He transacts. Maybe he doesn't have the expertise that typically will be associated with somebody who is leaning towards that industry. He transacts. Maybe the years of experience, maybe his peers in industry are laughing at him. You what? Do you know? Wait, you're building an AI model? Do you know how much it costs to build ChatGPT? Wait, you're from Africa and you're busy training a model. Let me train you on a thing or two. No, he transacts. I'm just saying, I've never seen that linking directly to perhaps all the lies and excuses I used to tell myself as to why something cannot be done. Now, I'm not saying that when you realize that, suddenly the sea is going to become
easier.
Things are the barrier is going to be lowered. No. You will scale it. It may be in 5 seconds or 5 years, but a wise man will scale that wall, will transact. Maybe, and I don't want to sound so sensational, but maybe Stellenbosch did not give him their blessing. He will transact. Maybe during the sitting of parliament, a certain, what do you call these things, man? Gazette. Maybe something was gazetted yesterday that goes head on a collision path with what he has been working to build and launch for the last 5 years. But a wise man identifies a city. It's fortified. It is as impossible as it looks. But perhaps most of us, we have mistaken what wisdom means. Wisdom, knowledge, information. So wisdom is bold, my brother. Wisdom doesn't travel alone. It travels with knowledge, travels with understanding, travels with diligence, travels with discernment. Maybe if you wanted wisdom as in information, it's not wisdom that will show up, it's data. It's data.
Speaking of, you've mentioned this. You have mentioned a scripture.
Yes.
It's still in Proverbs, I believe, as well,
Yes.
that speaks about diligence.
Oh my goodness. Yes, it is. It's Proverbs 21, I believe.
Yeah.
It asks a question. Do you see a man diligent? Do you see a man diligent in his work?
And you have your definition of what diligent in his work means. Take me through that.
You know what, my brother? I think I also need to cut the viewers a slack and myself as well. There are certain traumas that one may go through in attempting to start things. For me, it was MS Ads. For the viewer, it may be something else. Those traumas, if their hangover is allowed to linger, later on, we might find ourselves hugging a whole lot of excuses and a whole lot of things we convince ourselves with that excuses us from pursuing diligence, excellence, ticking the boxes that must be ticked. It will be, if I was a certain skin color, if I was born in a certain neighborhood, there's a school in KZN that cost this much. If I went to that school, or a school in Joburg that I can't pronounce, if I went to that school, maybe. So are we recusing ourselves from, let's make diligence practical. Do you answer your emails on time? When I meet you at an event, literally on our way to this discussion, my wife was contacted by somebody from Cape Town who met her at an event about 4 months ago. The global best practice, good people, is that when I meet you at an event and there's something you seek to do with me and I gave you my card, you gave me yours, but there's something you identified with to do together, the global best practice is not my standard. The global best practice principle is that do contact me within 72 hours. Because if you contact me 72 weeks later, I'll find it very hard to take you seriously. Yes, there are those that says, I wanted to be connected to you so that when something comes up, but in you telling me at that point, I'll realize whether this has been a long-standing going concern or it's something you're starting now. So I find it hard. So were you going through all your contacts before you get to me? Am I a leftover? I won't take that personal. I won't take that personal. You know how people pray? You're asking me about my Christianity. There's this saying, take the wheel, Jesus. That saying is accompanied by, I've tried everything. So as a last resort, God has to help me. Why is he the last resort? So I'm not God, but am I your last resort? I'll battle to take you seriously if I was not your first stop. Why do I want to be your first stop? I want to be your first stop so that you can figure out very quickly whether I can help you or not. And I prefer to be your first stop so that you can know whether I have a matching expertise or I don't. If I don't, let's carry on with life.
So to the Christian brothers and sisters, you're basically saying, take this diligence that will make you stand before kings. Take it to the way you network, take it to the way you do email, to the way you answer the phone, to the way you work with your team. Take it everywhere.
I do, and we went to London recently. I delivered 2 speeches when Visa, ABSA, and their strategic partners hosted my co-founder and I in London. We were put in front of 8 government ministers from South Africa, the ones we couldn't get on their diaries, right? They are busy. I don't hold it against them. If the country is burning, I understand why all the firefighters are not in the fire brigade room.
Yeah,
we ended up in front of them. The 2 speeches I made, the viewers may be surprised to learn that both speeches were not more than 2 minutes each. You see? One was at a business executive breakfast, and randomly, one of the ABSA executives asked me, would you maybe
say something
in closing? in closing, like this breakfast has been going on now. In closing, and I stood up, and I am very honored that what I said in 1.5 minutes, he told his team, can you include that in our annual report? All I had was 1 minute, 30 seconds. And to unpack it, to remove the mystery, I touched on relationship banking. And he happens to have been in relationship banking for more than 2 decades. I linked relationship banking to digitization to financial inclusion. That was my 1 minute, 30 seconds. That's one. And then on the other side, we were hosted by Nando's in London. The board of Nando's hosted us to impart their story to the deputy president who was who was on the delegation, to the ministers that were there. And then they asked me to say, would you close? I'm thinking, okay, I'll go over there. And then I took about 60 seconds. That's all I had. So to my brothers and sisters in the faith is, when opportunity locates you, would it find you ready? Or would you go like, but no one told me I'll be on the program. But wait, why didn't you look up everybody who was on that delegation? Even while you're in a hotel room, while you're on the flight, you see all the opportunities. Put the airline movies aside for a little bit and look up the faces of those in the room and find out what keeps them awake. Look them up in the news. Look them up everywhere. And then don't look them up, by the way, because you may be asked to close the meeting. You may not be. But look them up so that should there be an opportunity to ask a question during that conference or that meeting or that closed room board meeting, your question will be what I call an educated question. Because I've been guilty of this at conferences where I asked a question in my youthful days, young and naive. I asked a question because what I really wanted to say was to put my hand up and say, everyone, I'm Shadrack, and I just want you guys to realize I'm in the room. Those are the questions I asked. Attention seeking is what one can call it. Naive, ignorant, time wasting. I've been there, so I'm not going to sit here and judge everybody. But there comes a point where that expires. When you're asking a question, the person you're asking, the captain of industry, goes like, sorry, who are you again? You just asked a question. But because of the weight, not the cleverness, not the complicatedness, not the high-level English, it's so straightforward. But it causes them to pause a bit and say, I'm going to give you an answer now. And then for the rest of this answer, my people will talk to your people, will take this offline. Those are the questions you want to ask. Unfortunately, to ask those questions, you need to be diligent. You need to have done your homework on the subject on stage. Not when you are there. Oh yeah, they're here. Let me take notes. Oh, can they finish talking quickly? Because I have a question. No! You've lined up your questions. Your questions are in your notes because you knew who was going to talk there. Especially when it's the elders. I grew up in a village. I'm told, respect your elders. Meaning when the roving mic comes to you, you rather pass the opportunity than ask an uneducated, irrelevant question.
Man, you take diligence to a whole other level.
I've paid dearly for not doing so.
If I go back to the scripture you started with,
yes, sir.
Wisdom.
Yes, sir.
Looking at the city, fortified city, and just being courageous enough to go over the walls, take over the strongholds.
Yes.
I look at situations where, for a business owner, they are afraid to charge what they are worth, and because they keep losing customers, or they say, if I drop my price, I'll lose customers, or I'm competing with people who are not compliant, informal, and so they undercut me on price. And the only way for me to survive is to not charge what I'm worth.
Wow.
So this is like the mighty city that someone is looking at and thinking, will I be able to win here?
You've invited me to a room, or to a part of this room, through what you mentioned now. Sometimes the majority of problems we face in business, including your pricing metrics or how you position your fee, has nothing to do with business. It might just be dirty issues. It might just be dirty issues because you perhaps have a hangover, and I'm not saying that from judgment. I've been there. Maybe you are battling to land on an industry acceptable price or a market related price because maybe you need to go speak to someone. This has nothing to do with business. You need to go speak to someone as to what happened on that first presentation you ever made, and the numbers were on stage, and the numbers, you researched them. They made sense, and then you were booed out of the room. What did it find, that booing out of the room? What did it find in you? Let me tell you what it found. It found something from the playpen back in crash. It found something from some sibling rivalry that happened. I was inside his tent and I was from the other house. So there was no slaughtering of a sheep in that house. The Christmas clothes were not bought in that house. So now you're taking all those insecurities, because the truth is, leadership, you bring you into the marketplace. You don't send a representative. You may send a representative to some other stuff, but you bring you. So the you that is hurt will be in that boardroom. The you that is healed, hopefully, will be in that boardroom. The you that is sober, the you that can take criticism or not, will be in that boardroom. The you that can take a no or a slamming door in your face. I've had some of my best lessons taught to me by people that didn't want nothing to do with me. They call them haters, but haters are people that God used very mightily.
Do you have one example?
My wife and I, in our consulting days, funny enough, it had to do with money. We did some work for a client. He was in a process of raising capital. Not much by standards of what we now know as capital. But back there, it was a big deal. We were called in to help him raise 5 mil. In a very short period of time. That's local currencies are. And my goodness, it's another podcast, a discussion as to how that happened. After it happened, the brother refused to honor his invoice. The one he agreed to, he refused to honor his invoice. And why that revealed a hater in him, in the client whom I wanted to honor. He said he actually thinks we overcharged. We said, leadership, gentlemen, you should have brought that up before the 5 million landed in your account. The money was in the account. And he said, I'm not paying the success fees. He did pay the pre-consulting. He paid the middle consulting, but the bigger fee, the 90% of it was tied into the success when we still
Structured.
did that.
Okay.
Yeah. So it got so tense, man. He actually called some of his people. We were in a meeting in a restaurant with him. In a very brief meeting, my wife was there. Things got tense so quickly that I had to get up from that moment. When he said this thing, it hit hard. He said, but you people don't even know how to invoice properly. How am I supposed to even take that seriously? You people, look here. You did not include this. You didn't include this. You didn't structure it this way. It's not professional done. I can tell it was not an accounting system that created this thing. You guys are taking chances. You can't even. Maybe our invoicing is off, but did we help you get the money?
Still owe us.
Yes. So when he said that, it hit hard, man. It hit me so hard that I actually got up, and I went in deeper into the restaurant. When I left, I didn't know this, but they told my wife that we better end this meeting now because your husband, we think he went to fetch a knife to come and do some work on us. I was so disappointed. We have journeyed with these people for 6 months. They think that I'm going to borrow a knife, but nonetheless, here's a lesson learned. Years later, a transaction came through that was 10 times what that gentleman eventually paid us. He eventually paid us, not because of the knife, but he eventually paid us.
Now we'll never know.
For the record, there was no knives involved. But years later, a surreal moment happened between me and my wife as we journey in business. A transaction hit our account that we've never seen that transaction before. That level, that many digits. You know when you have to count the numbers. And it happened to be exactly 10 times what the gentleman had to pay us. And we looked at each other. We were not even thinking about that gentleman. And then she just mentioned it in passing. She said, do you realize that it appears as though, as far as doing our homework is concerned, we revisited this invoicing thing, even though the gentleman is not around to see us invoice well. Even though he went for the jugular, he went for the dagger when he saw that some of our invoicing processes or structures could have been better. He really hit below the belt. But look at God. When we didn't take it, because when we left, we debrief. Whenever we leave meetings, we debrief. So we debrief, we said, hey, honey, do you think we could maybe revisit some of our invoicing elements? I mean, what is saying as an excuse not to pay us is wrong, but there's a but that's needed. Is there something in me that perhaps gave them ground to really easily attack me? Could I may not control what they think of me, how they see me, but can I revisit this part that is within my control to power my diligence and therefore to catapult me onto the destiny I want?
Man, this is so powerful. The one thing that you do well, and I really need your hack here because I've seen so many people struggle with this, working with your wife for all these years. What's the secret, man?
I would
because
say,
many people have lost their families trying to do that.
I understand why a marriage could become a casualty of a business venture. Yeah. Actually, somebody made a joke and said MBAs are marriage breakers. And when I heard that, I said they haven't tried business. So here's how my lived experience. I'll mention two things. If things are not okay at home, leave any fantasies or ideas of doing business together alone. Just like how some may agree that a baby won't fix the marriage, a physical human baby may not fix the marriage, may not bring happiness. There will be joy, there'll be happiness, but the baby should not be burdened with having to bring happiness into the marriage. Business? Business will not complete you as a couple. It will probably do the opposite. It will test every aspect of your relationship. Oh, you guys will say you communicate, huh? Let's see, let's go. Business will humble you. Those are my words at the beginning. Business will humble you as a couple as well. So it will test. Oh, by the way, one of my the gentlemen I respect, whom you're familiar with, and so are your audiences, the late Dr. Miles Monroe.
Yeah, true.
He said storms ought to be viewed differently. They need to be viewed beyond the natural dimension.
Okay.
Into other aspects. He said, whenever people are, we've had the fires that rummaged through California recently. We've had your tornadoes. We've had the floods in Durban. We've had all this climate. It's like the climate is just kind of like throwing a tantrum at times. A climate tantrum that manifests itself through a storm or a tornado. He called it a building inspector. He said, when a storm marks your house and it says, I'm passing here, it's not going to say, oh, no. People live here. Let me. No. The storm has somehow decided where it held a meeting saying, I'm coming and you are on my path through you. He said, that's when it will be a revealer of the integrity and the civil and structural engineering that went into really embedding quality into the structure. So the physical structure, what will be left of it is only that part that was actually legit. Whatever was not, and maybe we tried to wing it. We said, we know someone who knows someone who can tell the town planners to look the other way. The storm was not in that meeting. So when the storm is passing, so I'm saying business
will test the
integrity. Test the integrity and the structural integrity of your relationship. But yet, if your relationship wins, you will pivot as husband and wife into a level of closeness, into a level of intimacy that is only known by those that have shared the front lines of a war, where they didn't know whether they'll come out of this alive. You know those brotherly bonds. By the way, our cadres that spend time in Lusaka, I know we are upset when they give each other tenders sometimes. I know it sends us as a country. It sends us on a really, I won't go there.
It triggers many people.
It triggers. Thank you for that. However, let's pack the injustice. Let's pack the envelopes and pack everything. Let's observe something that we can learn from them. Back in the MK days, there were brotherly bonds that were formed between these brothers that they basically evolved and pivoted into covenants. Bro, you see that bullet you just saved me from? I owe you my life. Today, social media popularity is taking over. Befriend me, friend request, but loyalty is growing thin and thin and thin. They say there's no loyalty among thieves, but when they do become loyal, it's savage. So I'm saying that when you survive the storm, the turbulences of a growing business, it has turbulences. When you survive them, by the time you touch down at your next stop, it's just a stop. It's not the end. When you touch down, you will get each other. There's certain times, when there's a husband and wife can communicate through looks. I wonder where they learned how to communicate through looks. It's because they either went through family crisis, business crisis, that brought them even closer and solidified their bond. So while the storm comes to test your bond, when it finds your bond true, it will gift you with concrete and titanium stuff, closeness. So yeah, and transparency. I mentioned two things. I said I'll mention two things. The second one is transparency. I know a lot of time when people speak about husband and wife, they're quick to say, communicate. I get it. There's more that can speak on that. Let me speak on transparency. The first gift, long before blockchain, which is a transparency technology, long before blockchain, long before technology, long before bringing transparency in the agricultural supply chain that we now are working daily in. First date with my wife. I didn't give her flowers. Between you and me, I couldn't afford them. But what I gave her instead, I gave her all my passwords. I realized that until that moment, I had a past of relationships that did not turn out as hoped. There was trauma, there was pain, there was tears. I decided in that moment that if I'm to give this relationship, which is now 11 years and still growing, 11 years married, if I was to give this 1 week relationship a chance, whatever it is, I don't know if it will lead into marriage, but if I'm to give it a chance, because I can see she's the one. If I'm to give it a chance, let me do what I haven't done in the past. Let me be open. Will it hurt? You bet. Will it make me uncomfortable? You bet. What if I gave her my phone password, my email password, my socials, and a message, an unforeseeable, undesirable message comes through from a known person? What if? But then nothing ventured, nothing conquered, something like that. So I took a risk, and I must admit, I didn't know that my wife will turn around and honor me, because messages did come. But when the messages came, she didn't abandon ship. Each message that came, when ghosts from the past locate you, they somehow locate you. When messages came, we were able to have a family meeting. During COVID, most of the viewers are familiar with our family meetings as a country. COVID was a crisis. So each of those messages that came through, and they did dry up eventually, thank God. When messages came through, hey man, who is heying you now? You can see, now you can see, so let's deal with it. So it saved me from having to deal with hey on my own. Now we can deal with it. So those became our early ventures of how we're going to deal with hey when it ends up in your DM. A certain hey, it's not just it's a hey. So we had to deal with the hey before we can deal with solving financial inclusion for farmers. So yes, transparency. I can't be a goalkeeper, When my phone vibrates and we're at home, I can't be diving.
Flying for it.
I can't be flying for it. And suddenly, I remember that I have a toilet trip that I forgot to make. I realize that if I value my health, I have to give up the password. That might not be so for some of the audiences. I'm not saying one size fits all, but I'm saying
that's what worked for you.
That's what worked for me. So that transparency later went through blockchain into agriculture. We had to crack open, we had to kick the door open and force open agricultural value chains and force them to be transparent. So that there's no crooked middleman there who's busy siphoning value out of that value chain without putting any value that justifies them getting a cut.
Simplify that so that people get to know as we get to a close what you are doing, the problems that you're solving, who should be looking for you.
Between the farmer, typically,
yeah,
in the traditional agri-trade, between the farmer and the retail shelves that your viewers would probably be frequenting after this, some of them. Between the farmer and your dinner tonight, in South African context, African context, it even gets more wilder. There's probably at least 20 middlemen that laid a claim to whatever the farmer was getting. That's not the future we want. That's not, and 80% of those middlemen can't justify why they're there. They're there because I went to school with him. So whatever he's doing there, he's going to cut me in. But at whose expense? At the farmer's expense. So not only is eFarmer rethinking agri-value chains, connecting farmers to our 6,000 buyers, but in the process, Gibbs recently made a commentary on our work. They call eFarmer a social tech.
Is it?
So we are advocating for social justice without being activists. Through layers of code, we are including those gogos so that they are paid a fair rate.
You mentioned blockchain. You are using blockchain.
We partnered with a Swiss foundation. We have built blockchain that we're in the process of integrating into our buyer pool of 6,000. So we have blockchain. And blockchain, for those that want to go beyond Bitcoin, it's a ledger. It's a ledger of truth that whatever became embedded on it cannot be erased. And whoever embedded anything, either through an action, I'll give you an example. A truck leaves Durban, is heading to the Joburg, is heading to Johannesburg.
Yeah.
Who packed it? Who harvested? What went into that harvest? We had children dying recently, and now our spaza shops have to account.
Yeah.
We have been in the business of accountability long before the government said spazas register an account. We were saying whoever touches that cabbage, we need to know who they are. Even if they're not touching it to benefit financially. Why did you touch it? Were your hands clean? Did you follow the safety protocols? Did you follow the food handling, food safety, food standards? So moving a cabbage from A to B, a whole lot happens in between. And sadly, historically, we've had a lot more middlemen that were holding on to that cabbage until they get paid more than they should have. And in that process, we have starving farmers who are farming food, but they don't have food on their table. Kids can't go to school. They can't hire farm laborers, all because their cash flow is a mess. eFarmer comes and say, we're not going to try and save the world. We will try, but let's save our farmers from starvation while they're farming. How do we do that? No magic. Let's secure them consistent revenue that comes with them tapping into our 6,000 buyers and still growing. If their revenue becomes predictable, they can plan better. They can sleep better. They can have a better conversation with their banker.
Love that. Can any farmer reach out to you? Or you've got regions that you're operating in?
Any farmer. We actually are nationwide in SA. We also have a presence into, I'm not going to say the rest of Africa. We have a presence in the broader Africa. So farmers can be on our website, efarmer.africa. They can actually download our app. And in terms of buyers, we have built something incredible for the households that can enable them, instead of simply buying from that guy on a bike, God bless that guy on a bike. He's linked to a crazy value chain. They can buy straight from the farm. It's only a matter of time when we turn the taps on and allow our households to buy directly from farmers. From now, you have a restaurant business, you have a food business, you are in a B2B, you reach out to eFarmer. Let's talk. Let's simplify your supply chain. Let's take some of the heavy lifting from your sourcing while you run your business.
And that is such a good pitch.
I take it. I take the compliment. Thank you.
All right. I think as we are coming to a close, man.
Yes.
Is there an opportunity in farming for young people?
There is ample opportunities in plural. But for those opportunities to be recognized and appreciated, our young people hopefully don't make the same mistake I made. I stayed the heck away from agriculture, from farming for the longest time, because for me, farming was, I worked the farm, dead under my nails. God bless those people that actually plant and harvest. But that's what we call the first mile of farming. That's on the farm. On the farm, there's a whole lot of processes. There's your health and safety. There's a lot more to farming than actually planting or harvesting with your hands.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of equipment, there's a whole lot of technologies on the farm. Then beyond the farm gate, where the value chain opens up to a whole lot of other milestones, there's ample opportunity for food science, food safety, transportations, logistics. The food business is an open trade. The question becomes, our young people, are they reading on some of these trends? Are they linking what they are reading and what they are hearing now to what comes naturally to them, what they studied? Maybe someone studied security. What if you had to come with a specialty focus of helping those farmers in Venda whose avocados are being raided on a daily basis? What if your security even involves drones? What if you combine digital with on the ground, boots on the ground, to solve those security in a way that a typical, traditional, we've been around for 20 years, security firm has not thought about that, because they're doing more of what made them successful. You come in and say, I love security, and I'm thinking there's guns, but there's drones. So let's rethink this whole security in agriculture. It's open for business.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much. This went as well as I expected it to. Always a pleasure meeting you. And that was the surprise intro that I was talking about. That you didn't know this part.
I see.
That you were part of the trigger that caused us to really up the game and get started. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it has blessed you. Remember, do not gatekeep it. Share it with someone that you know will be challenged like I was. But from us over on the studio, see you on the next episode. Thank you.